All right, I wanna start with a little bit of somber news. Just thoughts and prayers out to Cohen Craddock's family down in Madison, West Virginia. Saw that this morning and um, just sad. I don't have anything else to really say on it. Just sad. I have a 13-year-old myself, daughter, and as the season kicks off, that's definitely on a somber note. But I want the people down in Madison and throughout Southern West Virginia, and especially his family, to know that we are thinking about them and our prayers are with them. And so I want to start with that. Um, Next, I want to thank you all for being here. And we're going to get a lot of national attention on this game, but you guys are here consistently every single week covering us, and it's important, and you're fair, and so I appreciate that. Very, very, and I'm starting this, and there's a reason why I'm saying this, very appreciative of the opportunity to be the head coach here. You know, you want to play and you want to coach at places where it really matters, and it matters here. I thought about that a lot. Kind of the end of last week, we had Senator Joe Manchin, who, regardless of your political beliefs, he's a former player here and a leader and a leading voice in politics right now. And for the last few years, he was here. John Chambers, one of the leading business people in the entire world, spent some time here. Then we had Joe Mazzulla, who's the world champion coach of the Boston Celtics. Charles Wesley Godwin went from opening up for Luke Combs to being here at practice, and and it matters. And there's people, and I could go on. I could name a bunch of other people, but it matters here, and so very fortunate of that. We had a great fundraising event to kind of build off that on Saturday, raising money for the Country Roads Trust, and thankful for Joe Mazzulla to be here. Busy schedule, and I think I think people that were here really felt this, but I've known this since we first met over a year ago, is just a really humble person and really kind of servanthood behind his leadership style. And then Charles played at the end of the evening, and he's really talented. So happy for him, and probably as big a fan as there is of just all things Mountaineers. So, and then the other thing before we start talking about Penn State, I knew this, and Ren beat me to the punch a little bit, but this is the voice of the Mountaineers, Tony Creedy's 40th season, and he's as good as it gets. And so appreciate him, and hopefully his 40th. The older he gets, the less he's going to remember. But at least it's his most recent season will be one to remember. So talking about Penn State, obviously one of the top programs in the country. They deserve their top 10 preseason rankings. A lot of respect for Coach James Franklin, what he's done not only at Penn State, but what he did at Vanderbilt. They've got new coordinators in all three areas. Defensively, I think, is where it starts for them. Top 5 defense in most categories in 2023. The D-line is deep. They're talented. Multiple NFL players on that defensive line. I think at linebacker, a lot of returning experience. 41 really makes them go. And then, NFL talent, high-level talent at safety. And so presents some real challenges. Offensively, Andy did a great job at Kansas. Before that, he did a great job at Buffalo. He got after us pretty good last time he was here with Kansas. And so there's a lot to review. You're watching a lot of Kansas film. You're watching what Penn State did last year to kind of get the strengths of their football team. Their running backs, both those guys are elite talents. The tight ends are going to present some issues. Those are guys that not only have great size, but they run really well. And at Kansas, the tight ends were featured pieces of their offense, and there's no doubt that they'll be featured part at Penn State as well. Special teams, the coordinator did a really good job at Vanderbilt the last couple of years. He's well thought of within the special teams community. They've got a talented punter, and they've got a talented kickoff specialist. And then the returners, you start thinking about, they've got competition at kicker, but the returners are both running backs. And like I said, those are high-end guys. And then the Saunders kid that does their punt returning is really talented. And so very familiar with the roster. We tried to probably get most of them and didn't get it done. We got a few, but we got most of them on their roster we're very familiar with. And so really just kind of wrap up and open up for questions is our guys are excited about the opportunity. It's going to be a great challenge. Not going to make or break our season anyway, but I'm not trying to minimize the importance of it. This is a big-time college football weekend. We got Fox, big noon game. The crew's going to be here. McAfee's going to be here on Friday. A lot going on, and the spotlight's on Morgantown. And I fully expect our fans and our community to really blossom under the bright lights. So, with that, I'll take questions. Great.
You mentioned coordinators. Opening game, that I imagine be even more problematic because you don't have their game film. So how do you look at the players that you saw last year more than the coordinators and what they did at previous stops? How do you balance this?
So the way we do it, which could be same or different than other people, is we always start from a personnel standpoint first of all. And so you evaluate the personnel, the guys you think you're going to see. Now, there'll be some surprises as well. Some guys that made big improvements from last season or from the spring, or maybe some high school players. But you look at the strengths and weaknesses of those players, and then you start evaluating the schemes you could potentially. And it's just a best guess. They don't know what we're going to run, and all of our coordinators are back. We don't know what they're going to run, and they've got and they're all three new. So anytime you go into a new game, a new season, things are going to be different. I think they're in all three phases. They're going to be a little bit of mix. James has been a head coach for a long time. He's got some things that he really believes in. He's had a lot of success. So my best guess, because that's all it would be, it'd be an educated guess, would be that we're going to see some remnants of what they used to do on special teams, on defense and on offense, and then some new ideas that all three coordinators bring with them from their previous stops.
To that end, though, this year you're going into the game with Green having a season under his belt, a lot more continuity. You kind of know what this offense can do and maybe even what the potential is. How much of an advantage is that in comparison to when you were scheming for the game last year and you were more guessing on what you think?
Yeah, so – well, I wish they'd let us pick up right where we ended last year. So if we could have played them a week after the North Carolina game, I'd have really known what to expect, because we were in pretty good rhythm there. Other than that Oklahoma game, we were in pretty good rhythm. So, but they don't let you do that. And so it's been since late December since we've played a game. So, our players have changed. Their players have changed. Even the guys returning have gotten bigger, stronger. We've evolved what we're doing offensively. There's a little bit of unknown what they're doing defensively. Now, we do go into the game, like, I really felt like Garrett was prepared to take a step last year during the offseason going into the game. But you don't know until you start. He's the starter, and he goes and plays the whole season. So definitely have a better feel for how he's going to play, and a lot of belief in him. I said this several times, man. I think he's, if not the most underrated player in college football, one of them. And so excited to watch him get a chance on a national stage on Saturday.
It's probably a question for Jordan, but I'll ask you, is there some projecting going on and how Aller's going to fit what Andy does offensively? How do you kind of match up his skill set to what they did at Kansas?
Well, I think you have to dig a little deeper. If you look at what Andy did at Buffalo, they had a kid that the quarterback that I think he left after we played him in the bowl game there, whatever, down in Mobile. That would have been 18. They had a quarterback that's very similar in size. I have a hard time remembering all the way back there. I know the kid was similar in size and had a big, strong arm like Drew does. So you look back what he did there, and they didn't. They had some injuries at quarterback at Kansas during his tenure there, so he had to play some guys that weren't necessarily the Bean kid or Jalen Daniels and some of the stuff they did with those individuals. And so, he's a really talented play caller. He was really talented. Like, I felt that. I remember having a conversation with my agents going into the Buffalo game when we were playing Buffalo. I'm like, man, I don't know this guy, but man, he does some really good stuff offensively. So he's a guy that I've known and kind of been on my radar for a long time now. So he's going to figure it out. They're not going to look just like they did at Kansas. But they've got two quarterbacks they could potentially play. Perbula, who we recruited in high school, really good athlete and throws the ball efficient enough too. And so he's going to figure it out. They get good pieces. We'll try to figure it out early in the game and then kind of go from there.
You know what you got from running back, so that's a good place to start for him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he didn't take the job because they didn't have players. You know what I mean? Like, that's a pressure position he's taken. They've had a few different guys, and all those. If you look back at the run that James had through offensive coordinators, like, he's had really talented individuals in that role, and there's some pressure that goes along with that role for sure. But Andy knew, and he's very smart, and so I think he probably made a calculated decision. He looked at that roster and said, "Oh yeah, they got some players, especially at running back, tight end, some young wideouts," and so he's got some pieces there, and there's a lot of things he could do. We kind of just take our best guess.
In terms of the offense and the man that leading the way, what is your impression of Drew Aller now versus when you played him? Because entering that game, there kind of were questions about him like Green, but now we've seen him.
Yeah, I think that the quarterback probably gets too much blame and too much credit when things go good. I think this more nationally probably than locally, that he's got pressure on him or he didn't play what. Like, if you go back and look and you think about this as a first-time starter, the kid played pretty well last year. He played really well against us. He was the difference in the game last year. We did okay versus their run game, but he hit some explosive passes against us that really hurt us. I thought he was accurate with the football in our contest. We didn't do a great job covering him, but I thought he played well. And if you look at his complete body of work, I think sometimes unfairly, a lot of people struggle against Michigan and Ohio State. It's not like, Michigan did win the national championship. Ohio State does have a pretty sporty little team too. So I think sometimes those are a little bit maybe unfair because if you look at his entire body of work as a first-year starter, he did some really good things.
25-2, 344, whatever it was, attempts, 2 picks. Ain't bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's talented.
Do you like we're kind of after you're able to watch the tape from the scrimmage, all that stuff, where you're at depth-wise, and
we stayed.
Some of those questions you had.
We stayed relatively healthy. I don't think you really know till you play a game, and I'm not trying to avoid the question. There's things I feel good about. There's some question marks. I'm not going to share what I think the question marks are because I'll be helping them, but there's some question marks, and you don't really know until you play. And so I'm eager. I'm glad we got this week to prepare. We need it. But I'm eager to see kind of what we have. I feel really good about it. I like the leadership on our team. We're going to have a really good football team. And we've worked a long time to be able to peak at the right time, and that's the hope. You're always going to have some first game jitters watching the games on Saturday. You're always going to have some things that go because you haven't played in so long that are maybe a little bit different in game one. But I'm eager to see our guys compete.
Talking to Garrett, he mentioned the 2 edge guys, and then he also mentioned the Mike linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see from their edge rushers, and what do you see from King?
Well, it starts at the edge with, let's go back this. They had 2. Did they have 2 first-round picks last year? I know they had Chop, and then the other kid was either late first, early second. I can't remember. So, for them, I think it starts with the 2 ends, Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter. And Abdul Carter started last year linebacker. And regardless of what draft board you're looking at, he's one of the early defensive guys taken. And then Dennis Sutton has an early round grade on him as well. I think where it gets lost a little bit on their D-line is they've got a number of guys they play interior-wise, and it's going to be hot on Saturday. And so they're going to be able to rotate a bunch of different bodies. They're third in the Vanover kid. He's a really talented player as well. And so they have, that's probably, I don't want to speak for them, but watching them, that seems like a really deep position for them across the defensive line.
This might be a long way to get to the question of, is there a message to you guys out of the Georgia Tech game against Florida State? But it seemed to me that the comments from the Georgia Tech coach were very similar to everything you're trying to do, both the way he runs his offense, the fact that they're trying to build a strong foundation for the future, that they're looking at a hard-nosed game that begins at the line of scrimmage, all of that together. And I was just wondering whether your thoughts on that, on being.
I had the game on in the background, and so I watched it, but I watched it casually. I will say there's some similarities. I watched them last year, so like I said, I had the game on. I really didn't pay a ton of attention to it. Buster Faulkner's offense coordinator at Georgia Tech. He played and coached with a guy that coached me at Kentucky, Chris Hatcher, who's head coach at Sanford. So I know Buster. It's funny because he was an air raid quarterback. He played at Valdosta State and was a really good quarterback. My background's kind of in the air raid, and he won a significant game, run the ball all the time against Florida State, and that's kind of what they did last year as well. And here we are last year, had a lot of success. I don't know enough about their roster to say how close it is. They do some things schematically that are similar to the way we do it. We probably throw the ball a little bit more than they do. And just looking at the stats than they did against Florida State. And Florida State has a bunch of different bodies, a bunch of different new guys playing on defense. They lost a ton, where Penn State lost a few, but they got a lot coming back. So
does what you're doing, what you're building here, how does that play into being an underdog in a game like this, especially with so much unknown going in?
Yeah, I don't know the best way to answer that, Bob, really, other than the fact that I guess we feel like if we play our game, that we've got a chance to win against anybody we're playing against now. And we have a ton of respect for Penn State, but we're going to play our style of football. And we've really been working on that probably for the last 19 months now, and we feel like we've honed that in even more so in fall camp. And so we're excited about playing. The fact that we're underdogs, that doesn't really – we're going to play with a chip on our shoulder. We're going to try to play really physical, whether that's Penn State, Albany, Pitt, Kansas, whoever we're playing week to week. I don't know if we have a bigger chip on our shoulder because we're playing Penn State.
I don't know if you pay attention to this at all, but the Penn State's the favorite, but the line's actually moved closer than it opened at 12.5, now 8.5.
That usually that happens just because of home games. Like that. That's the only reason I know that is because there's when you're dealing with some data analytics, you see it, but that from my perspective, like you see that when you're playing at home, especially early in the year when people are still trying to figure out what the teams are. So you see a little bit of movement on that. I wouldn't read into that.
Yeah, and just to follow up to that, that's kind of where I was going, that you talked about before of kind of feeling a little bit of a slight off the rankings and things like that. But since then, and I saw you were on with Marty and McGee. Marty Smith did have put you guys in the playoff. There has been some national media.
That was an Appalachian vote, I believe.
Yeah, there's been some coming
kindred
towards,
spirit. There's
been some coming towards more respect to West Virginia in the last week or two, and obviously McAfee's included with a little bit of a bias there.
Well, here's the thing. It comes and goes. I think that all this preseason stuff's really good entertainment, but you're going to know within the first month. And so I think, we've got a lot of proof still. As I've talked, I really haven't talked about our team. I talked about our team last year. I've been more disappointed in how some of our players have been portrayed in the preseason, in particular like a Wyatt Milam, a Garrett Green. People aren't talking about our running backs. I think they're pretty talented. Aubrey Burks has been a really productive player. Garnett Hollis is a kid that transferred in that was a high-level All-Big Ten player at Northwestern. That's some of the guys that, that I think they've been slighted. For our football team, time will tell. We play a really tough schedule, and so we're going to have plenty of opportunities to make some noise nationally.
Looking back at that game last year, the rushing totals were identical. Obviously, the difference was in the passing game. Obviously, that's you anticipate that being similar or completely different?
Third and fourth down were critical last year too. Like, every play matters, but there's some that are weighted a little heavier. and some third and fourth downs there where we didn't take advantage, and they did. And they were better than us last year. We didn't play as well when it came winning time, but they were better, and so we'll see how the last year's treated us.
Just a question on your schedule. You had the mock game on your first day of class. Is that new for you?
Yeah, we moved it up. Yeah, we did. So we did. The reason we did that is to give us a little bit more lead time into Penn State. Yeah, we used to do it a week out, but part of the things we changed through the our fall camp schedule is moving that mock game to the night. We don't like to do a whole lot of strenuous activity on the first day of class just because there's a lot going on, and so we moved the mock game to that day and then started our Penn State stuff the next day.
For them? Can they do all the? Is it like another challenge, like handle all the distractions and know, by the way, go play football?
Nah, we just wanted to get out. So my game is really not a strenuous deal. It's more of a mental, where we work a lot of our transitions. You work a lot of the special situational stuff that you got to work. We wanted to get out under the lights as well. Y'all are gonna see that it's been quite a bit of improvement with our lighting at the stadium. So it's a little brighter, and so we wanted to catch kicks and catch balls under the lights too. But yeah, that is a change though, Mike.
And then you've been kind of repetitive about this, that you were intentionally physical, tackling all that stuff, and then
we'll see if it pays off.
Yeah, you can knock on wood here, but like you had guys who came back from injuries quickly, maybe accelerated, maybe they wanted to be a part of this because it was fun. It didn't seem like you racked up injuries too. You don't know yet, but do you feel like in more ways than just, hey, we got tough, like it did work out and you have some confidence behind that hunch you might have had?
So that's the reason behind it. I think the better time to ask that's Saturday about 4 o'clock, 3:30, whatever time we get done. And if we do tackle better, if our line of scrimmage play is positive on both sides, then the answer is yes. Because all your planning, that just gives you an opportunity. You still got to go out and perform on Saturdays. And so we did that with the hope that we're going to perform the way we need to perform on Saturday. But until we do that, I can't tell you if it worked or not. I feel good about it. We've stayed relatively healthy. We still got to get through this week's practice. We got a hard practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, so I don't want to jinx anything there. But we stayed relatively healthy. We want to do that this week, and then I really believe that what we did in the preseason gives us the best opportunity to be at our best in week one.
You mentioned playing with a chip on your shoulder. Last year's game, the end of the game, they scored a little touchdown. How have you used that, or have you used it?
It just is what it is. I'm really not using it. It just kind of is what it is. They scored late. I don't really have a necessarily problem with it as far as, but it is what it is. Like, here's the thing, if our guys need something like that to motivate them, then but I will say this: the score of the game, and we didn't play very well. We had a chance to win the game in the third quarter when winning plays were required, and we didn't make those winning plays, and they did. And so, they beat us, and now we got an opportunity to play them at home. And this is going to be the last time that West Virginia and Penn State are on the field together, especially here in Morgantown for the foreseeable future. And I guess we could always play in the playoff or a bowl game or something like that, but this is the last time for the foreseeable future.
The communication system, you've used it game last year practice, but this is going to be louder than any of those environments. So how do you adjust that? Do you have a backup?
Well, I hope our fans are a little quieter when we got to work it on defense. I want our fans to be as loud as possible when Penn State has the ball, and a little quieter when we have the ball until we score. When we score, they can be loud. But you got to practice it. It's it does get where it's difficult to hear. So you do have to practice it. And then you got to have plan B, where if they can't hear, then you go to kind of plan B.
To Greg's point, and it's kind of amusing because we've talked about the communication and the technology. The New Mexico was using it, and the FCS team they played didn't because they're not using the playoffs. And ended up beating New Mexico without using the iPads or the communication system. So, what is it?
It's blocking and tackling, John.
There you go.
You got block, you got tackle. The iPad's not going to help you with that. You might have a better idea where they're going to be, but you still got to win it. And so that, like, we can get as fancy as we want to, but it's going to come down to usually about 8 or 9 mano and manos during each play. And if you win your share, you usually win the game. And we can talk about it on the coach to player. We can watch it on the Surface Pros, but yep, as much as we progress, it comes down to those things.
All the stuff about their new coordinators being new, you don't have that, but I don't suspect you're going to be like identical.
Nah.
It's kind of a weird paradox there. You have all the familiar parts, but I guess how would it, don't give it away, I know that, but like how different do you think things could look? And is it just doing stuff better or doing better
Well, I
things?
think you study what you did, like you study what you did a year ago. You want to do things that philosophically you really believe in, so you're going to continue to do those. But you can't present it in the same way. They got really good coaches, and they've been watching us from last year, and so you got to change. You got to change up what you're doing, and that's in all 3 phases: offense, defense, special teams. And bottom line is, when we get in this game and it kicks off, there's going to be a bunch of adjustments, and so both sides of the stadium are going to have to make a bunch of adjustments, and who can do that in the most efficient way and do it early, we'll have an advantage.
Tom Allen's history, big pressure guy from his time.
He's a coordinator obviously before he's head coach, and I'm not real sure if he was calling defense or Indiana or not. But yeah, I think he's been a good mix. From a structure standpoint, hasn't been much different than what Manny did. That's probably, I don't know, I wasn't privy to any information, but when I started really studying him back in May, I'm like, oh, I can see why James, Tom's obviously had a lot of success as a coordinator. And then when you start watching him structurally, there's some real similarities, and he knows the opponents in the Big Ten, or the old Big Ten. I guess, there's several new ones, but.
Okay, anything else for Coach? All right.